Welcome to Offset. Larry and the Big Man, along with Dave Ricchini, Jay Caulfield, two-time Stanley Cup champion and best-dressed man on game days. We want to thank One Team Media, Brian Hess and his team, and Logan Douglas, who's producing this episode, along with from Odyssey Pittsburgh, 93.7 The Fan, Michael Stracciapoli, our strategic partnership, bringing Andrew Fillipponi and more to the show.
And also Rourke Automotive. We talked about a new location that opened up in Cannonsburg. He's our title sponsor. But one thing about the Rourke Automotive Group, they've got the Rourke Advantage, which is lifetime state inspection, lifetime oil change, and an engine warranty. Take advantage of it, but they do a great job. We're very happy that they're a part of our podcast.
And that said, I literally just got back from Dublin, Ireland, was over there actually doing the game. It didn't start that way. It was a AAA trip that I was a part of. We brought 150 Steeler fans, and there were tens of thousands of them. But then I got the call up to be the public address announcer because the Steelers were the designated home team, which I think everybody saw. It became really obvious. So the league asked the team, what's your wish list? And they got Renegade and the Steel Line drum band and other elements. And then they said, we'd like to bring our public address announcer. So the league said, hey, we'll get back to you. So I guess they checked me out. And so I was really humbled and honored to have that chance because it was an international stage. Yeah. First time a regular season game was ever played in Dublin or in Ireland. So for me, it was pretty special. I'm kind of dragging, but that's okay. When you get a W, right, Jay, makes all the difference.
It certainly does. It would be tough coming back with a loss, but big win, and you're out there, Larry. But by the way, what was the breakdown of Steeler fans to Viking fans? We heard different numbers.
Yeah, it would be hard to determine. Just from the look, though, you saw the purple.
Yeah.
But it was overwhelming with the terrible towels in the black and gold. I mean, the whole town, I would say 10-1, walking around the town. Now, this area called the Temple Bar would be city center. That's where Fitzsimmons was the Steelers' kind of their pub, and then the Vikings were somewhere else. But everybody gathered there. So walking around the cobblestone streets and having people yell at you, hey, Larry, But it was really kind of fun. And I didn't know that I would be on television. They would announce my name as I introduced the national anthem.
Which you nailed. You nailed the names, I was going to say.
It's better that I didn't know because I had no audio from television. So it was just the producer, guy named Bob Becker, great guy. He does the Super Bowl, the Pro Bowls, the draft. And he just cued me to introduce the national anthems. And I thought to myself, okay, yeah, I didn't stumble, which had he told me, you're going to be on international television around the world, don't mess it up, might have been a different vibe. But what an experience for me, really professionally, the highlight of my career, to say, welcome to Croke Park Stadium. And then we did the defensive lineups in stadium, when you go at linebacker, number 90, T.J. Watt, and he kicked right at the right moment, and Cam Hayward coming out of the tunnel. So, I mean, the energy, somebody said it had a college football energy to the whole experience, and I think that's pretty accurate. So, but you guys know, you get a win, that makes all the difference in the world.
Well, it's not like the first time this has gone down either, but it felt like, I think the excitement of the team and where they're at, everything we discuss, but being out there, I think it just, you talked about a college atmosphere and what that makes it, but I just felt like there's just been a different buzz about from training camp till now, and then you have that game, you get the win, they're first in the division, all the things that go with it, but to me, it did look like a great atmosphere, and Larry, you did a great job, and
thank you.
Make it back in time for us here, but to me, it did have that great, great look.
Can you confirm that the Guinness on draft tastes better in Ireland? Okay.
100%.
Okay.
Guinness on draft fresh, yes. And it's almost overstated. It's almost like we say Permanis here. To everybody that comes, you have a Permanis. Everybody's got to try a Guinness. But the pubs are old. I went to a pub called the Bleeding Horse from 1647. That's when the place was built. And you think about that. And then I went to the oldest pub on the island in Ireland from 1198 called the Brazen Head. And on my radio show, every St. Patrick's Day, we call there and check in, at St. Patrick's Day. What are they doing in Dublin, Ireland? Well, it turns out one of the managers, his name was Vince Dooley. And he goes, "You're not going to believe this, Larry. I'm married to a girl from Pittsburgh." It's like, so with the Rooneys and all the connections, nice to have that one in the books. It was just a hell of a good time. And you get the win, you come home happy. Now they get the bye. And next up, they host the Browns at Acrisure the following Sunday. So,
which is kind of wild. I mean, I remember, was I wrong? I used to think that when there was a bye week for your division, that the whole division would be shut down. It's not. The Steelers are the only one.
Right.
With this bye.
They try to piggyback off the international games, although Minnesota's staying in Europe. And
they went to London.
And then Cleveland, I know. But Cleveland's coming back and playing the Steelers.
After they're in London. Yeah, that's true, Jay.
It's kind of wild. No respect for
Yeah, so surprise, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 3-1, and as you mentioned, in first place, and the Bengals looked horrible. Yeah, right. Last night, Monday Night Football.
Yeah, you do. And the rest of the division truly, and we'll get into that when we talk about the Steelers, the divisions and all that, but for me, I mean, I have Baltimore. I looked at them as a Super Bowl contender. They're in a world of hurt, right? And then now the Steelers are basically taking over, they're in the driver's seat, obviously, but I really like what they did in this game. I mean, I think we talked about, what this can lead to, but I thought the game, I'm going to go my point on the game. I thought the running game, when you saw Gainwell in there as the feature back, there was a different look for that. Now, there's a number of things that the Steelers did different up front as well. But that's a guy that kind of finds daylight. He waits. He's got this little bit of he's got patience, right? And then
like a Le'Veon, not to that level, but patience.
True. Because but he has this thing, but he just finds a way to get the daylight, and then he hits it hard. I mean, to me, he did a great job. I mean, the running game, and that's not a knock on anything to Warren or what's going on. But when you get an opportunity, you could tell he felt like you knew he was the feature back. That to me was a huge difference in the game and a big part of the win.
And you could tell as an emphasis too, based on the snap counts at the tight end position. I know Jay, you have some thoughts on this, but Darnell Washington played 48 snaps out of 53 on offense. Freiermuth 15, Jonnu Smith 13. So that plays two rules. One, Washington's the better blocking tight end for the running game, which you saw Gainwell have success. But also, Rodgers was fairly clean in the pocket. No sacks. So it kind of played two parts.
Yeah, I really think that was a big thing. And like you said, we will talk about the tight end thing because situation, it's a wild one for me. But I did think up front, and I think at times like an extra tackle. If you looked across the line, what they built up, they just took it to Minnesota in certain situations, and it just had that look. And when you get a running game that's going, and then it gives you a little more time in the passing game, one leads to the other and vice versa a little bit, right? So they have to adapt. I just think all day long, they kind of won the battle up front. You can even tell by the attitude of the linemen when there was that 4th and 2 or, late, when we're getting later in the game, you could look at the linemen all wanted to make sure they went for it and that kind of thing because they felt like at times they were starting to handling Minnesota when they needed to. So I thought that was one great part of it. And certainly DK Metcalf and Rodgers, that throw and then the finish by Metcalf, I don't think anybody else can make that. Well, there's guys that can make the throw. I mean, you look at the guys with the way Aaron Rodgers does it. I don't want to say nobody else can make that throw, but it's the way he does it, right? I mean, out of the blue, he fires a bull. I mean, phenomenal feed in stride. And then you need a guy that athletic, that skilled, that fast to finish it off. I thought that was such a great thing that I don't think you didn't feel you've had that opportunity. Now you do. And I think coupled with the running game and the defense, how they played the game, it was great.
DK, 5th most receiving yards after contact in the NFL. The top 4 guys are all running backs. So think about that. The guy next to DK is Puka Nacua with the Rams, and he has 27 more catches than DK. So DK's got more yards after contact.
Yeah.
And he's got 27 less catches. So it just shows that, again, your point, the the pass was on the money, or else that's probably just a first down. Hitting him in stride allows DK to keep momentum and take it in for the score.
Yep. It was a fun game that it ended well, but it got a little shaky at the end. But people didn't realize at the time the injury issues that they were dealing with Ramsey and with Deshaun Elliott and having, 3 safeties. And obviously Minnesota found a way to take advantage of that. And they climbed right back in that game with back-to-back touchdowns, which was...
Yeah, I think it did get... I mean, when you were late in the decision-making, hey, look, coaches, they got to go with what they feel. The only thing I thought when they did go for it the first time around, right? When they went for it, I just thought the play was, of all the times, it just looked like, okay, hand it off. And it was almost like a little play. I don't know. There's a lot of things you could do, but it was straightforward. Why got beat on that?
You got one of the best quarterbacks in history. Put it in his hands.
Like a play action, something to make some type of play action. And it was that became just, it looked like Minnesota they just stuffed it and that was it.
Yeah, even though Gainwell had a great game and they obviously thought they're going to think we're going to do something else. Maybe we'll catch him off guard.
Yeah.
But the one everybody's talking about is choosing not to kick the field goal when you could have really, it felt like you really iced the game and take any energy and momentum away from Minnesota. Once they got an opportunity, we were like, look out, because of what happened to Pitt the day before.
Yeah.
Them being up 17 or 18 and losing, and what happened to...
Are you talking about the one close to the goal? Goal? Well, that was the one that they all wanted to go for it, though. I mean, you could see Rodgers, the offensive line, everybody wanted to go for it. And that's the one where I felt the play was just like hand it off, run into the back of the lineman, whatever. It wasn't anything there. I get it. I mean, you could have iced the game right then and there.
What about the other one, though? That could have used the tush push.
Well, I think the first one, it's still a 2-score game if you don't get it.
Yeah.
And if you get the touchdown, it's a 3-score game.
Yeah.
And they're doing the math with the clock and looking at that. Okay, they got to score 2 scores in this amount of time. The last one, it's either way, because if you go for it and get stopped there, then Minnesota's got to go 20 yards to get in field goal range.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Look, whenever it goes against you, then we're all everybody's a critic, but you just go by the feel of the game and what you have. I personally think the first one that they went right up without, and went after it, then you kind of late. That's why I said the offensive linemen felt like they were owning them, that they could own them. And then the delay and everything, it got out of them. And you're right. Then all of a sudden it flipped and Carson Wentz, he threw for 350 yards still. I mean, we're talking about how good everything was, but he still threw for 350. Also threw 46 times.
Well, let's not forget the tip and pick by TJ Watt was a complete game changer because Minnesota was showing some momentum and they were starting to find their way based on the injuries the Steelers defense had. And TJ Watt does what you expect TJ Watt to do.
Yep.
Change the momentum of the game.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get our Yinzer dogs, but he was one of the guys that I had with the interception, also at the sack, applying pressure again, because even though Wentz wasn't hit all that often, he was under pressure.
Yeah.
They were getting him out of the pocket, and he was getting, fancy feet back there. And I mean, you saw that the Vikings have a ton of weapons with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor. We didn't see a lot of TJ Hawkinson and Mason out of the backfield. And yeah, Wentz had a good game passing, but I mean,
who's the fastest linebacker, though, in
Peyton
recorded NFL history?
Yeah. Well, you could see his stride when he was going after him. You could almost see it. There's a little slip early. Addison had just a little slip, and then almost Peyton was in full stride. And again, it's a great
effort. I mean, he's a talent. And
a linebacker's edge and a wide receiver.
So it was 22.48 miles per hour, which is your point, the fastest.
Very good.
Next-gen stats since 16. I went back and looked at, remember DK Metcalf, he caught Budda Baker? He was 22.64. So Wilson wasn't far behind. Everybody talks about DK and how impressive that was. Wilson was not far off. And to your point, he's a linebacker.
And Jordan Addison is fast. In the closing speed, you could see, I'm thinking, he might actually be able to stop him. It was unbelievable.
Comments out there that said Addison must not have been doing too many sprints in his when he was suspended early in the year. I just thought his stride by Wilson was outstanding in the effort and what it saved and what it meant in the game.
Yeah.
The time. It was about the timing.
Right in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Blown coverage.
Yeah.
At the end of the game, the time difference mattered.
Yep.
So every play.
I'll say, and we'll get into it on other parts of the show, but the way they were getting out there, I just felt like the defense wasn't. There was activity. There was stunts and blitzes and they're ball hawks. They're getting after the ball like Ramsey's, which to me was a terrible call. That's another thing. We'll get into that topic later. But for me, I felt like that going against the call against them for me, that overturn that makes no sense. But that's something we can get into and I can bend my ear about it later on. I just didn't think.
You mean the scoop and score?
Yeah.
I thought it was legit.
Yeah.
Legit call or a legit touchdown?
It was called back,
yeah,
obviously. But looking at the replay, they said it wasn't Ramsey who was out of bounds.
No, he's the dumbest call. This is still the dumbest
didn't
call.
have possession. If he has possession and his foot's out of bounds, okay. Yeah. Well, when the ball's bouncing around, you don't have possession. I don't know how they called that it was out of bounds at that point. And Ramsey picked it up, took it in. That would have.
Yeah. So a lot of things they get the win. It's a big win. And again, especially with every team, you look at the teams across the league. My one final point, there's Green Bay. They got lit up defensively all night long. So did Dallas, but people expected maybe Dallas to get lit up. Green Bay teams have come who 2 weeks in, you're thinking they're going to be good. Then somebody opens his mouth and goes, we could go undefeated. Who does that? Who does it? I would sit that guy down forever to say after 2 games you're going to go undefeated in Green Bay, right? It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And, of course, they lose to Cleveland, and they should have lost to Dallas the other night. But my point is that teams are getting somebody who you think is going to be solid in all phases. Nobody is. There's not one team. The Eagles could have been beat all their games. I mean, to me, it's wide open, and if the Steelers keep pulling it together and you have a threat, you have a quarterback that can make something happen, maybe out of nothing at given times.
I was looking at that, Jay, with the stats for the league. And, normally there are few teams that maybe don't have a loss yet. But this is the parity of the National Football League. And to your point, Philly could have lost a couple of those games.
And
too.
the Bills, they could have lost to the Saints on Sunday.
Right. That was
the Saints were in that.
I know. Yeah, I know.
So the predictions.
Yes.
From last week, Jay, you said Steelers win 28-20.
Good pick.
Dave, you said Minnesota wins 27-13.
I was misquoted.
And I called for the Steelers to win 24-17. So
pretty good, guys.
That was good. It was a tough one. I understand where Dave is coming from because I looked at it a lot of different ways. Just a minute, the Steelers came together perfectly for us.
Compliment right there.
Are you going to keep a running tab on this? Is that what you're going to keep that for us?
Yeah, I'll keep.
Did you keep our season? Did you keep our numbers for what we predicted the season was going to be? Do you have that? Like our seasonal, like our all along
the Super Bowl winners? Yeah.
No, but I didn't. If I went back, I think I said 11-6 on the season.
The good is all these shows are recorded, so we have the ability to
look back at
ourselves. Yeah.
That's what you're going to do.
That's a good task for Logan.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Can you pull it up, Logan? Logan's
going, oh, please.
Yeah, that might have tuned in. That's a bit.
I think I picked Steelers to win 10 and make the playoffs and get the first playoff win in a while. Yeah. So what about our Yinzer Dogs play of the week?
Yeah, look, I think this is a great one because we mentioned about multiple people and we each are going to look at 3 guys and then come up with our one. But when I looked at it for me, I really felt like Gainwell was number one because I think the running game was, again, you could really tell that he knew he was the feature back in this given game. That's one. I think Peyton Wilson with what he did, 13 tackles, 8 solo, just how his speed and how a difference maker in the game. And I thought Benton, I'm going to give that because I've been taking a little grief, comes up with a couple of big sacks. And but I'm with all that, that's my 3. But I think I'm going to go with Gainwell. I'm going to go with the running game. I thought it was a huge difference. They had a great, strong running game. And that's when you establish a running game, you're establishing like your authority, like you're putting it down, you're shoving it down Minnesota. And with him doing that, the line felt that way, and he did a great job. So Gainwell's mine.
Dave.
I'm going to go Peyton Wilson. I mean, Gainwell was on a list. DK was on a list. Keanu Benton. But I just think that tackle, they played a great 55 minutes to start that game. That tackle saving a minute, and then you see how everything transpires after that. If Minnesota has the ball on the plus side of the 2-minute warning, only needing a field goal, that game changes completely. So I think the hustle, a lot of guys might give up on that play, especially seeing a wide receiver streaking down the sideline. Just the effort level there. Plus, you mentioned the 13 total tackles, too, for a loss. I'm going to go Peyton Wilson.
So if you're a fan and you're thinking to yourself, and we're having this conversation, you ask anybody, who is the player of the week? The good part is, like we're having a discussion, there were multiple choices. It wasn't just one. But I felt it was the most dominating, complete game that they've had through the second half of last season. You felt like they're going to win this game. They're going to find a way to win. They were a lot of big plays, takeaways and turnovers. But I'm going to go with Wilson too.
Oh,
that's it. I totally get it. That's sorry. Okay, Larry. Once again, when you're the Yinzer Dog of the Week?
You get the original Yinzer Dogs tailgate pack, which is the Yinzer Dog, Stanley P. Kachowski Kobasi. You've got Babushka Mama pierogies made by a little Polish woman with real potato, deep fried with Yinzer dust and Yinzer halushki. So
sounds filling. It's got to slow them down by at least 1 mile per hour next week. So actually, got to buy. Say they're fine. Buy to die.
So wait till they get their little gift. Wait till this arrives at the stadium. They're going to go, "What's in my locker?" And then you're going to see from Yinzer Dogs. It's pretty special.
You know what? And we'll finish this part of our segment on this note, and that is, I loved that to a player after the game, they credited the fans.
Yeah.
And making it feel like they were home.
Yeah.
Every player referenced that, including then Coach Tomlin. So it was a special day, a special win, and being 3-1 going into a bye while you're leading the division ain't a bad place to be.
No, it's not. It was phenomenal. And hey, look, we needed that good news there. I got to say one more thing before we finish. Dave, real quick, say something about Penn State, because that was a big game. We're glad we won overseas, but what happened?
Go to overtime. What happened?
Yeah, so I was in Cleveland. The Guardians game was nationally televised. So I was at a sports bar watching the Guardians, and you had Penn State, Oregon, and you had the Alabama-Georgia game. So it was a pretty good setup for me to watch all three. But it's the same stuff that I talked about last week. Just what is Franklin going to do in that big matchup? 4-20 coming against top 10 teams. Well, look at the offense. Look at the offense in the first 3 quarters. Look at the performance. The defense played great. I think they did their job of containing Dante Hall, for the most part of that game. But between Franklin and Drew Aller, he was 0-6. He's 0-6 now against top 10 teams. You break down his stats. He threw for 137 yards total. 82 of those came in the fourth quarter and overtime. So he basically did nothing in the first 3 quarters. It's just, they have way too much talent. When they decided, a lot of guys decided to return, the running backs return for this year. Danny Sutton returned, the big defensive end. Drew Aller returned. They're like, okay, we're going to run this back because we think we got the teams. Eventually, you have to win one of these games. Now, the good news for them, they're going to have 2 more opportunities because Indiana's coming in. They're going to Ohio State. So you have opportunities, but if you lose 2 of those, even if you win out, you're not making the playoffs this year. So we'll see how they respond. But just, as a Penn State fan, very disappointing.
They got another call that overturned, just like I felt we talked about the Ramsey one. The overturn of the fumble, when Penn State caused the fumble and Oregon, coughed it up, that they went to replay and his leg is just grazing the ground. To me, I don't get it. I thought they got hosed on that one too. I didn't see enough to overturn it. That's the thing, to overturn it. That hurt them too. So, but still, they got to win the big. You said they got to.
They scored first in overtime. I mean, they even with all that said, they scored first in overtime. You got to stop. You win the game. They couldn't do it.
There you go, Larry.
All right. That said, we have another expert from 93.7 The Fan. He does the afternoon show, has for many years, along with Chris Muller. It's the PM team, also known nationally, originally through the CBS group and also through Odyssey. That is Andrew Fillipponi. Andrew, welcome.
Larry, I heard you more than the broadcasters in Ireland. The acoustics at Croke Park, every highlight that got played, you were just booming in the background with your description of what had just occurred. So congratulations on all your success.
Well, I got to tell you, from a career standpoint, that was a highlight to be international for the first time in my career like that. It was really pretty cool. And I did not know they were going to announce my name on television. It's a good thing because that would have added to the performance anxiety, but it worked out. And it was a lot of fun. Bottom line for Steelers fans, they got a win. So let's walk through what happened, Jay.
Yeah, and Andrew, I looked at this game and we saw just a great atmosphere. But for me, the running game, and I think with Gainwell being the feature back, like you could tell from you can see the athlete in him, knowing he's the feature back on that given day. I just think that running game went to a little bit of a different level, a guy that finds the cracks, finds the holes, works behind his lineman, and just knows when to jump. I just like the way he played the game.
Well, it was the first time really he was used as a number one running back. He'd always been a change of pace guy. He had backed up Saquon Barkley in Philadelphia and DeAndre Swift before that. And so you never know with these understudy running backs, when one is given a chance, how they're going to do with it. And he had the best game rushing the ball by a Steelers back in a very, very long time. I don't think you can go away from that. I like Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren has excelled before as more of a number two. And when they played Cleveland after this bye week, I would start the game with Kenneth Gainwell as the running back based on just how well he played, almost 100 yards rushing and the 2 touchdowns. I also want to tip my cap here to Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin because they had a wrinkle and a trick up their sleeve for this game. They went with big, heavy personnel. They used a 6th offensive lineman, Darnell Washington, who functions really as an extra offensive lineman because of how big he is, played almost the entire game, was the number 1 used tight end. And they also brought in Skoranek as a wide receiver who's a blocker. So they ran the ball well, but it wasn't just, asking their offensive linemen from the last 3 weeks to execute similar game plans. They actually gave more resources to the run game, and I thought it paid dividends. And clearly Minnesota didn't see it coming because it changed their whole defensive philosophy in this game, which had them more on their heels than their toes, Jay, as well.
Let's talk about the defense, Andrew. Obviously, some significant plays, game-changing plays like T.J. Watt's tip pass and interception and a short run back, but that was a game changer. Overall, how would you assess the defense, especially late in the game when they were really struggling with injuries?
Yeah, I think it was probably their best, most complete defensive performance of the entire year. I mean, you give up 32 to the Jets. That's bad, even though you won the game. New England moved the ball a lot. The turnovers made up for that, though. But still, you don't want to see a team have almost 400 total yards in a game, even though you only hold them to 14 points. Minnesota had 6 points in the fourth quarter. They had just scored 50 on the Bengals the week before. Now, they did that largely with taking turnovers and generating points off of them, but still, Jordan Mason went for over 100 yards against Cincinnati. They have Jefferson, who's one of the greatest receivers of all time. And I thought the Steelers jumped on their injuries on the offensive line. And we saw Derek Carman get his hand on a ball that was intercepted. I think Nick Herbig continues to play great in Alex Highsmith's absence. That's another guy I really don't want to take off the field. TJ Watt's earning his $41 million now. And we'd be remiss if we didn't point out what Peyton Wilson did, even though overall it's not a good play because it's a busted coverage and that should never happen given the situation. You can't let the ball get thrown over your head when a team's got 95 yards to go or whatever it was. But to run Jordan Addison down when Addison had a 5-yard head start ended up being, in my opinion, the play of the game that saved the Steelers' butt in Ireland.
Yeah, that's why we named Peyton Wilson the original Yinzer Dogs Player of the Week.
Well, Pony doesn't know the Yinzer Dog of the Week, Pony. You have to hear what they're going to get from us. Good, Larry, why don't you tell Pony what they're getting from our show that's going to go to them from you?
Thank you, big man Jay Caulfield. They'll get a Yinzer Dog tailgate package, including Stanley P. Kachowski Kibasi, along with Babushka Mama Pierogies and Yinzer Halushki.
If I make a right prediction on here, can I get the Yinzer Dog care package as well? Can that be my reward?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. No, absolutely, and you should. And
yeah, you should, Andrew.
We appreciate you a lot. So
yeah, we did. We felt the same way about that too with Peyton Wilson. I also thought one thing, and I'll get into the other question, but sometimes the defensive line have to be good and have to be almost unselfish to let your linebackers do their thing. I think one of the reasons why Peyton Wilson can come up with 13 tackles and 8 solos, you got the big man up front having to kind of occupy and not letting the offensive line or the guys get to the second level, Andrew, if you will, and get on the backers.
Yeah, and I also think that because of the way the Steelers started the game, they got out to a lead. They had the big DK Metcalf play. They scored 2 touchdowns early. Minnesota was playing catch-up. So when Minnesota plays from behind, they got to throw the ball more. And that's when Peyton Wilson gets played more right now than Cole Holcomb. Cole Holcomb is in the game as a run defender, but when it becomes an obvious passing situation, that's when Peyton Wilson gets used because of the speed that we saw. I mean, he accelerated up to 22 miles per hour on that play. It was the fastest they had ever documented a linebacker moving in an NFL game. With all the stats and numbers they have out there now over the last 10 years, they keep track of this stuff. They've never seen a linebacker run that fast, and he needed to, because if he didn't, well, now Minnesota saves a minute if they score there. Instead of going on for an onside kick, Jay, they can kick the ball deep. And the Steelers didn't get a first down, so they would have punted back to Minnesota, and instead of starting at their own 20, maybe they start at their own 35 or 40-yard line, and at that point, with the way kickers are now, they only need a couple of first downs to tie the game, and who knows what would have happened in overtime.
Well, let's talk about quarterback play. Aaron Rodgers, that hookup with DK Metcalf was special, and then Carson Wentz. How do you evaluate the performance of the two quarterbacks?
Well, I think Aaron Rodgers is pretty unselfish, is what I would start by saying, because this offensive game plan was clearly more about them running the ball than it was about putting the ball in his hands. And he's got to sign off on that, and he's got to be willing to make that adjustment and be on board with that being their strategy in a game. And it was less about him, and it was more about getting the ball to Gainwell, even with Jaylen Warren out, which I give them credit for doing too, because I like Jaylen Warren a lot, and I wasn't sure that Gainwell could get the job done. So they believed in Gainwell. They had a plan. They stuck with it. He's not making mistakes. I mean, he's playing a very clean, efficient brand of football. There's not a lot of big plays. The Metcalf play was a big one because it was a short catch and a long run. The ball's really still not being thrown downfield. And when you're running the ball like they did and you're getting out to big leads and playing defense, it's not as important. However, I still think eventually they're going to have to trust their pass protection and allow for Aaron Rodgers to get the ball to the intermediate and deep levels of the field to become the offense that they want to be. Maybe not next week against Cleveland. They might not need to do that, and maybe not against Cincinnati either with their injuries and with Browning and in the way they played last night against Denver. They look like one of the worst teams in the NFL now, but against the better teams in the NFL, eventually they're going to need Aaron Rodgers to take advantage of more than just 5 yards within the line of scrimmage. Because if not, defenses are going to make an adjustment to them. Now that they put this on tape with the big personnel, Cleveland's going to make an adjustment to that next game.
Yeah, and Andrew, I think you touched on the tight ends and the utilization of Washington on so many plays as a blocking tight end. But I also still go back to that thing when we talked about it last week. Freiermuth, 14, 15 snaps, no targets. I felt even before we went into this game, they just haven't even been on the same page for me. And I think somehow that's going to be something that can be the use of a tight end. Rodgers has always utilized a tight end, always had somebody he could rely on and go to. And they got to still find that. In this league, it's so important to have that guy. And right now, still the Freiermuth thing is a concern for me.
Well, I think it's one of the biggest negatives to come out of this game besides injuries. The negatives would be some of the decisions that got made late in the game that allowed for it to become a close game. And then what happened with Freiermuth. Essentially, what I believe happened was he was phased out of the game plan because they were going to go run heavy and there's better run blocking tight ends. And then what ends up happening is, my opinion, because he's not as focused as he would be if he were involved in the game, he basically goes nonchalant on a field goal try, and the kick gets blocked because of his lack of blocking, which is exactly why he's not in the lineup in this game to begin with. He's more wide receiver than tight end. He's not a complete tight end like Heath Miller was. And clearly, right now, they feel like with Darnell Washington, if they're going to run the football, they want him in the game before Freiermuth. So Calvin Austin's out now, Jay, and that's a multi-week injury. And I don't see a wide receiver knocking down the door to take his spot. So Freiermuth should get used more like a wide receiver in this game against Cleveland. They don't have better options. He should be. Him and Jonnu Smith. This is a game for both of those guys when they get back to work after this bye week, for Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth to become bigger focal points in the offense now that they're down one of their better wide receivers.
So, Jay, Andrew, what about the option to go for it, not take the field goal late in the game? Your thought?
Well, I actually was fine with going for it to make it a 17-point game because I felt like the drawback or consequences of not getting it were I could live with. They're backed all the way up inside their own 5-yard line. They're still down 2 scores with less than 5 minutes left. I don't see them going 97 yards and then either kicking a field goal or scoring a touchdown to beat you in that condensed amount of time. I thought there was more to be won than lost there. Now, what I didn't like was the indecisiveness. You got Rodgers telling the kicker not to go out there. Tomlin gets talked out of it. It seemed like everything was not really well organized and well thought out there. So that was my only gripe with that. I did not like in the moment when they punted the ball back from Minnesota up 3, when all they needed was a yard. I did not like that decision. I thought they should have gone for another one of those push plays like they did with Washington earlier in the game to get the yard. However, it worked. Tomlin punted it back because he trusted his defense, and his defense for most of the game had been excellent, and they came through with a near interception, and then they knocked the ball down on Wentz on the 4th down play. So in the end, it worked out, but my opinion is if you can't get a yard, you don't deserve to win the game. And I would have trusted my offense and those big people movers up front to get me a half a yard there and win the game.
Yeah, Pony, we talked about this, Larry and I, off air. I felt that moment when, like you said, the indecision started to kind of take away, like if they would have went right away, you could see Rodgers, you could see the offensive line. It was the first time you really saw and felt like the big boys up front, that they knew they could handle this. And then by the time they come out there and run a play, it's like it had no jam. Like they lost the drive, but I thought you saw the linemen, you saw Rodgers. That's the way they get. They wanted to push it home too. I was in favor of that myself. I didn't really like the way the play called and when it came down at the final verdict of it, but to me, I felt the same way about it. I thought the indecision kind of took away the energy right away for me.
Well, and my thing there is there's got to be better communication before the 3rd down play gets run. Like, hey, you got 2 shots at this or you've only got 1. And if Aaron Rodgers knows, okay, 3rd down is my last look at this because we want to go up 3 scores, well then, okay. You want to have, I think, that cohesion. If not, they know, okay, we get stopped here. Let's get right back in the huddle and come up with what we want our best 4th down play to be. So that type of indecision, I think, contributed to the play not being a successful one. I really didn't have a problem with them running the ball there, though, because they had run the ball so well the entire game. And I thought Gainwell could get 3 or 4 yards there on that run, running off the left side, because it had worked basically that entire drive and the whole game leading up to that. So it was more for me about how they were not completely in unison, in chorus with what their objective was on that drive. And that's something that they got to fix for their next game.
And that said, here we sit after week 4, the Steelers in first place at 3-1. And look at Baltimore, Cleveland. You kind of figured they were going to be Cleveland and didn't know Joe Burrow would get injured for Cincinnati, but surprise for a lot of fans who didn't think they'd be in this position with an extra week of rest, the only team that's got a bye going into week 5.
Well, I think the Steelers, based on my preseason expectations for them, which were not very high, I think they're in a great spot. As far as I look at it with the AFC, there's only really 2 teams in the entire conference that have played like Super Bowl contenders through the first quarter of the season, and that would be Buffalo, who's 4-0. And the other team would be the Colts, who barely lost in LA, and they're 3-1, and they only punted once in their first 3 games, but they've got Daniel Jones as their quarterback, and everybody wonders when, the clock's going to strike midnight on him. So everybody else in the conference has warts. Baltimore can't play defense. They've got tons of injuries on defense, And now Lamar Jackson's got a bad hamstring, and he might not play against Houston. If he doesn't play against Houston, they've got the number one scoring defense in the whole league. They could easily lose that game and be 1-4 if they got to go with their backup quarterback, who looked awful against Kansas City. Kansas City's 2-2. They've looked much better the last, I'd say, 6 quarters of football, second half against the Giants and what they did against Baltimore. So maybe they're coming to life. And then the Chargers do what they always do, Larry, which is right when people start to believe in them, they go play a game in New York against a rookie quarterback making his first start. They get beat, and they have more injuries on their offensive line and can't protect their quarterback. So I think the rest of the league has come back to the Steelers, and Aaron Rodgers through 4 games has played better than I thought he would.
Hey, Pony, the one thing, and you kind of touched on it a little bit right there in your answer, but I still can't remember an NFL season where teams even like Green Bay, Buffalo could have lost multiple games. You look at the one Baltimore gave up to Buffalo and then how they looked the other night against the Saints. But Green Bay, teams that were supposed to be elite, can't stop anybody in some of these given nights. It's unbelievable to me. If you watch the Green Bay Dallas game, I couldn't believe how Civ-like Green Bay looked. And they're a Super Bowl contender in the NFC. I've never seen it like this.
Well, Philadelphia even is 4-0 and they've won 20 of 21 games. And I think they got outgained in 4 games. I think they've given up more yards than they've produced. I want to say they had 7 passing yards or something like that in the second half against Tampa. And AJ Brown did absolutely nothing. And Saquon Barkley hasn't gotten going for them yet this year. So, maybe in a way that's a good thing for them because they're undefeated and these things have not clicked offensively and they get the benefit of the doubt because they won the Super Bowl last year. But you're right. Green Bay after 2 games looked like they were going to be the team that stepped up here and really with the Micah Parsons trade looked like they were a class by themselves. That has not happened. And Buffalo against New Orleans, the Saints put a scare in them for about 3 quarters and change. But their saving grace is that Josh Allen right now, I'd say, is up there with Matthew Stafford and Jalen Hurts as the guys that are playing the quarterback position the best in the NFL. Hurts doesn't have the stats, but makes all the right plays and big plays. And I would say Allen and Stafford statistically have been my 2 favorite quarterbacks in the NFL through the first 4 games.
All right, with Andrew Fillipponi, before you go, wanted to get your debrief on the Ryder Cup. A lot of controversy surrounding fan behavior and otherwise. Your thoughts?
Well, a few things have become obvious to me. They clearly, the European side, have a much better system of not only deciding who's going to play, but how they're going to set their team up for these matches. Both the pairings, when they put guys together for 4-ball and alternate shots, and then even when they set their lineup for Sunday and it's just single match play events. This Keegan Bradley decision where he didn't pick himself, there was this feeling that the U.S. team was going to get almost momentum off of that. Like he was going to completely put himself into being the coach of the team and the leader of the team. And they were going to want to almost play for him because he did an unselfish thing. That ended up not being true. I do think that the fans, and look, I like that for once golf has an event where it's not everybody zipping their lips for 6 hours and, all about etiquette and decorum. However, you can't be cussing guys out and calling out people's wives and dumping drinks on people and stuff. I mean, I wouldn't accept that kind of behavior at a college football tailgate or football game, let alone a golf course. So to me, that just it adds to the kind of the stereotype that we're ugly Americans, and I honestly think it's also a motivating factor for them. I mean, Jay's gone into places like Philadelphia where the fans have been pigs and acted like idiots, and I think players sometimes get a kick out of that. And I think Europe got a big time kick out of let's shut up these fans who came here to mock us, ridicule us, and say nasty things to us, and they absolutely reveled in the fact of shutting those people up when this tournament was all said and done.
I totally agree with that. I do. I think how you said it, Andrew, is perfect because it did get out of hand. It got away from them. They had to bring the police down. Everything that went with that. I also felt, and I listened, the comeback, everything that went with that, that's great. But I liken that to like the European being up. It's like the Steelers leading. I've used this as an example, 35-0 at halftime. And then they come out in the second half and they're there. They don't know what they did the night before. And it kind of got away. Almost caught them, right? Andrew almost caught them because they got beyond the 8 ball. Then the momentum started to roll for U.S. But I totally agree. They are better at this event. They're ready. They have guys that are hungry. I think the money issue also was a stupid thing on the U.S. side. They all were almost now we're all going to donate our $500,000 to a charity. To make a push about money in this event, when the general public knows all these players that are in it have made enough money as it is, it was a stupid way to get into the event and lead into it that you needed to have money come to each player. The Europeans don't do that. So if for this event, Andrew, they don't do that. I thought that was another thing leading into it that just stirred the pot for the Europeans.
I would even at this point, I think the captain's picks thing, it ends up, I think, creating more controversy than is necessary. And I don't feel like they get the reason why they probably do it is because they want to create opportunities for guys who might not be having great golf seasons, but they feel like can excel in this event based on prior experience and just overall resumes. And so they've created more spots that are subjective ones that come down to the captain's decision. I would actually get rid of that. I would just make it strictly, we're going to go to a points-based system. Here's what you've done during the year. In the best 12 golfers go. And that's it. And then there's no complaining. There's no bitching about it. The only way you get in is based on your performance, not who you're friends with, not who Scotty Scheffler wants to bring with him, not who Keegan Bradley has played golf with before and likes. None of that. I would remove that completely. It's just based on what did you do in the 2 years leading up to the Ryder Cup. We'll give certain points to certain bigger events, and we'll let the chips fall where they may. And those are the 12 guys we're taking. Because I think the process of who they pick ends up becoming too big of a distraction to the overall event, and that might hurt them once they get to the event itself.
Next up, Ireland. As Rory McIlroy said, their fans will be much more civil. We'll see.
I didn't even think about that. What a weekend in Ireland. You got Shane Lowry, Rory McIlroy, the football game.
I was in a pub in Dublin watching the Ryder Cup finish with Irish people there and English people. And boy, when they won after the putt, it was like a Super Bowl kind of atmosphere. It really was. So they appreciate winning it. We'll see what happens. And as always, Andrew, we thank you. Check out Andrew Fillipponi afternoons, 2 to 6 on 93.7 The Fan with Chris Muller, the PM team. Andrew, appreciate you. Thank you.
Hey, guys.
Well, Jay, it's a great week.
Yeah, great good week.
Yeah.
So glad you're back. You had a great trip. And what an experience for you and everybody involved with it. Successful.
Got a Steelerless Sunday, so I'm going to enjoy
We don't like that. There's something about that's a tough. Now we got to go
after a win.
Yeah, after a win. At least it's after a win, so we're happy about that. But it's a long. When there's no Steeler game, it's
Understood. Yeah. You kind of Jones a bit. You want more action. Want to thank Ryan Jorgen and Logan Douglas, One Team Media with Brian Hess, their fearless leader, and my fearless leader is Michael Spatchipoli from Odyssey Pittsburgh, who also of the 5 radio stations, one of them is key for this broadcast, and that is 93.7 The Fan.
Yeah, and also Rourke Automotive. Really proud or really happy that he's part of us as a title sponsor of Rourke Advantage Lifetime State Inspection, oil change, and also your engine warranty. They do a great job. Thanks, Dave.
All right. For Jay Caulfield, Larry Richert, Larry and the Big Man, Offset. That's a wrap.